All right, let's jump right in. Today's explainer takes us back into the autobiography of the great Pashtun leader Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan, who you probably know best as Bacha Khan. We're exploring chapter 10 today, called A Change of Prisons, and we're going to trace his, frankly, heroine journey through the brutal British Indian prison system. As we go through this, I want you to pay close attention to his moral compass, because it is absolutely unwavering. But before we get into the timeline, let me ask you something. Would you accept an easy way out of brutal punishment if it meant compromising your ultimate cause? I mean, it's pretty easy to say no way from the comfort of our living rooms, right? But try to imagine being subjected to literal hard labor, terrible, filthy conditions, and total isolation. As we walk through the agonizing choices Bacha Khan had to make while locked up, consider your own boundaries. How much physical and mental degradation could you actually endure before you compromised your principles? For Bacha Khan, the answer to that was absolute. Okay, let's dive into this. Visually mapping out his path here, you can see the geographic journey he was forced to undertake. He started in initial confinement in Peshawar, was moved to rigorous labor in Dera Ismail Khan, then over to Dera Ghazi Khan, and finally, because his health was completely failing, to Lahore Central Jail. Let's look at what actually went down at that second stop, Dera Ismail Khan. 20. Now, at Dera Ismail Khan, his fetters were actually removed, which, sounds like an improvement, right? Well, not exactly. It came with a massively punishing trade-off. He was forced to endure rigorous daily labor, specifically grinding 20 seers of corn every single day on this massive, heavy grindstone. That is literally backbreaking work. And there's this brilliant juxtaposition that happens here. The jailer at this prison, this elderly former soldier, was watching Bacha Khan grind all this corn. And out of deep religious guilt, he actually tells Bacha Khan to stop, saying he was the only one in the prison there on behalf of God. So Bacha Khan stops to please the old man, but the second the jailer leaves, he goes right back to it. When he's caught and asked why, Bacha Khan points to a guy nearby, a literal robber and murderer, and makes this incredible comparison. He basically says, if that murderer over there is willing to grind corn for his violent crimes, why on earth should I mind grinding corn for a cause that I believe is pure and holy? And the physical labor wasn't even the only hardship. We have to talk about the food. The source text notes that the bread was so hard it was like they had literally mixed cement into it, completely impossible to chew, and the vegetables were unimaginably awful. Just to give you an idea of how bad it was, one day Bacha Khan offered some of these vegetables to the prison cat, and even the cat was like, no thanks, and refused to eat them. So the elderly jailer kindly offered to have special home-cooked food sent from his own house, but sticking to those strict principles we talked about, Bacha Khan absolutely refused to accept any special treatment whatsoever. And that staunch integrity, it extended to literally every interaction he had. Take the deputy jailer, a guy named Gangaram. He was a deeply corrupt man who would actually stir up quarrels among the prisoners on purpose, just so he could step in and demand bribes to settle them. When Gangaram sent an agent offering to get Bacha Khan out of solitary confinement for a fee, Bacha Khan just flatly replied with this quote. He said, "Bribing is a social evil. I will have no part of it. You know that I am here because I refuse to furnish security. If I have to bribe anyone, I may as well pay the security." He simply wasn't going to play their corrupt game. But Gangaram's corruption was systemic, and honestly, it was horrifying. He didn't just extort bribes. He actively facilitated the abuse of young prisoners. He allowed inmates to pay 5 rupees to have a young Muslim boy placed in their cell for the night. Bacha Khan didn't just sit back and watch this happen. He directly confronted the jailer's hypocrisy face to face, asking him how he could possibly pray 5 times a day as a good Muslim while allowing that kind of abuse right inside his own prison walls. And Bacha Khan was equally bold with the higher-ups too. One day, the English superintendent of the prison, who was actually a doctor, came to his cell. Bacha Khan shows him the bowl of awful vegetables, pointing out that not even the cat would touch it. The superintendent just dismisses him, claiming the food is perfectly fine. Realizing that arguing about the food is a dead end, Bacha Khan pivots. He points to a heavily fettered criminal in the cell opposite him and challenges the doctor directly. He says, "Look, we're both prisoners grinding the exact same corn, but is my crime the same as his? Tell me, how do you treat prisoners like me back in your country?" The superintendent had absolutely no answer for that and just left without saying a single word. And this brilliantly illustrates the ripple effect of his integrity. Later, when he was sent to a workshop to make envelopes, Bacha Khan was interacting with prisoners from all over the province. He started advising them to stop fighting and give up their vices. And miraculously, they actually listened. But this had a totally unintended consequence. Gangaram's illicit bribe business absolutely plummeted because, well, the prisoners weren't fighting anymore. So, out of sheer greed, Gangaram conspires against him, reports Bacha Khan as a troublemaker, and that is what directly leads to his transfer out to Dera Ghazi Khan. Now, the conditions of this transfer were clearly designed to completely degrade him. He was thrown into a police car with the curtains tightly drawn, his feet were heavily fettered, handcuffs on his wrists, and get this, a heavy iron collar locked around his neck. To make it even worse, they forced him into prison clothes that were incredibly tight and ridiculously short. It was just a shocking spectacle. When he finally arrived at Dera Ghazi Khan, an ally of his, Ubaid al-Rashid Khan, was waiting there and was completely stunned. He later admitted that seeing all that heavy security and the chains, he thought a highly dangerous murderer was arriving, not a political prisoner. But then we see this incredible contrast. The change of scenery brought a complete 180 in terms of his treatment. He left behind that systemic cruelty and cement-like food and was met with genuine individual compassion at Dera Ghazi Khan. The second he was inside, his fetters were removed. The superintendent there was actually a really decent guy who allowed the political prisoners to clean and grind their own wheat so they could make fresh chapatis. On top of that, the special class prisoners figured out who Bacha Khan was and urged the superintendent to move him to their barracks. The superintendent agreed and even swapped out Bacha Khan's harsh prison labor, which was rope making, for spinning a charkha. Bacha Khan reflected a lot on this moment in his writings. He honestly felt this transfer was an act of God's infinite mercy, because his health was failing fast and he had no idea how much longer he could have survived in that previous prison. Let's move to and see how this builds, because despite the improved conditions, the physical damage was sadly already done. Bacha Khan had to be transferred yet again, this time to Lahore Central Jail for some really serious medical intervention. His teeth and gums were rotting. They were just totally wrecked by that atrocious, unchewable food he was forced to eat back at Dera Ismail Khan. And unfortunately, the second he gets to Lahore, the honeymoon phase is over. He's met with immediate hostility. The jailer at Lahore, Khan Aladdin Khan, was a guy notorious for having zero sympathy for nationalist prisoners. He actually went out of his way to be extremely harsh with them. It's this sobering reminder that, sure, an individual superintendent here or there might show some mercy, but the overarching systemic cruelty of the British Indian prison complex, that was ever present. But amidst all that systemic cruelty, you find these incredible moments of resistance. Lahore Central Jail housed a group of Sikh prisoners who had been thrown into solitary confinement. And why? Because when they were in the main barracks, they had unified and loudly chanted together, Sat Sri Akal. Bacha Khan noticed that a huge feeling of power and strength had just taken possession of these guys. It was amazing. The worse the jailers treated them, the stronger and more powerful they felt in their solidarity. And that exact same spirit of solidarity quickly worked in Bacha Khan's favor, too. When the Caliphate prisoners, who were also locked up at Lahore, found out that Bacha Khan had been brought in, they definitely didn't stay quiet about it. They raised their voices in this massive, unified protest against the prison administration. And it worked. That unexpected unity totally forced the administration's hand, and the very next day, Bacha Khan was moved into the political prisoner barracks. Inside those barracks, Bacha Khan found an amazing sense of brotherhood. He was lodged with notable Congress leaders, guys like Aga Safdar and Lala Lajpat Rai. They spent their days having these deep, lengthy discussions about religion and politics. They were basically turning a placement for pure punishment into a place of high-level learning. He even started studying the Holy Quran with a fellow prisoner, Malik Lal Khan. Though, to be fair, that steady partnership didn't last very long. Malik Lal Khan actually gave up their joint studies pretty quickly, telling Bacha Khan, "You interpret the Quran in your own way." Bacha Khan just kind of noted that the poor guy was used to following the beaten track and hadn't really learned how to think for himself. But this quote, it perfectly captures Bacha Khan's fierce, independent, and completely unconventional way of thinking, which honestly intimidated his friends just as much as his foes. Okay, but the crucial point is how this physical suffering actually gets resolved, because this really dark chapter eventually ends with an act of profound grace. A few days into his stay at Lahore, a dental surgeon finally arrived to treat Bacha Khan's damaged mouth. His name was Dr. Prem Nath. Bacha Khan actually described him as the very image of love. Dr. Prem Nath carefully extracted those rotting teeth, cleaned the rest, prescribed the medicine he needed, and most importantly, ordered a much-needed nourishing diet to get him back on his feet. Now, because Bacha Khan was a well-to-do guy, he naturally offered to pay the doctor for his services, but Dr. Prem Nath flatly refused, and he tells him, "Listen,
What crime have you committed? You are here because of your love for your country and your people. I would be ashamed of myself if I accepted payment from you. I can't make a great sacrifice like you, but I can at least offer you this small service." I mean, wow. It was just this beautiful acknowledgement of the immense personal sacrifices Bacha Khan was making every single day.
Which brings us to the end of our explainer today. And it really leaves us with this final thought to ponder. What is the true cost of moral integrity? And how does enduring profound hardship alongside diverse allies forge such an unbreakable spirit? Bacha Khan survived literal torture, the terrible food, the heavy chains, the corrupt officials, by holding on to his cause and finding unity with others, from those chanting Sikh prisoners to a deeply compassionate dental surgeon. It's an incredible setup for what comes next in his autobiography. I highly encourage you to keep exploring this story on your own, and we'll see you next time as we continue to unpack these fascinating historical sources.